Okay, good morning everybody. We'll go ahead and get started now. My name is Chris Binding. I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at EMS Software, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Akshay Mahajan, our VP of Product Management, and Logan Steinbrink, who's one of our Solutions Consultants. Today we're going to cover part 1 of 2 in this week's webinar series focused on enhancements to user-defined fields and booking level check-in. First, just a few introductory slides from me before we get started with the demonstrations. A couple of housekeeping items. So the attendee lines are muted right now. We cannot hear you. That is purposeful because there are over 150 of you online right now. And so you can submit questions via the Q&A box, and we'll take as many of those questions as we can at the end of the webinar. Recordings will be emailed to all registrants of either today's or tomorrow's webinar. So if you've registered for at least one of them, you will receive recordings to both, and we will send that out tomorrow afternoon. Just to set the stage for the agenda for this week, so today we're going to cover the purpose of the webinar series, why this release is important to you, those 2 demonstration areas that I mentioned, booking level check-in and UDF enhancements. We'll also cover system requirements, upgrade considerations, and just a few additional items, some other items that are going to be included in this month's release that are not feature enhancements. And then we'll also cover kind of what to expect next in terms of the software being available and documentation. Tomorrow we'll cover 3 different demonstration areas, including automated reports, enhancements to notification rules, and easy installation for desktop users. We'll also do a recap of those other areas that we just talked about around system requirements, considerations, and what to expect next in documentation. So today this is going to be our focus. Let's get started off with what is the purpose of this particular webinar series. So some of you may have joined us a couple of weeks ago when we first did this webinar series. If you didn't, welcome. Thank you for joining us this week. We had huge response to the first 2 webinars that we did, so much so that we thought we should repeat them again. So we're glad to have so many of you again online with us today. I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Akshay now. He's just going to talk through a little bit around what exactly we're doing this webinar series.
Hi everybody. I'm very excited to be here and present the new release of EMS to all of you. So the key purpose of this webinar series is to start a communication channel with you to tell you all about what are the new things that we're doing with the new release that are coming in, so that we can demonstrate that to you, so we can understand what the new functionality in the new release is. How does it help you so that you can prepare for your upgrade process and be ready for that. We can also, this is also a channel to help you so that you can understand how can you upgrade and when you should upgrade. Every time there's an upgrade, there is always considerations to be kept in mind. So we want to be very explicit in some of these considerations from a release-to-release perspective. And for this release, we'll talk about the considerations for upgrading here as well. And last, but definitely not the least, give you the details around system requirements, the kind of versions we support, we don't support, going from this new release onwards. Why is this release important to you? The key highlight for this release for us has been to be able to take top enhancements that our expert users have requested us for last few months. We did a survey asking a lot of you about what those enhancements you would like to see. We did that enhanced survey internally to ask our consultants and everybody else who's facing you as well. And from that list, we came up with these 4 big enhancements that we have added in this release. These 4 are focused towards our expert users, automated report generation and delivery, user-defined field enhancements, notification rule enhancements, and booking level check-in. Apart from these 4 big core features or new enhancements, we do have minor enhancements and bug fixes in all areas of our product, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the session. For IT and system administrators, we have a new way to do installation of the desktop client. That new way helps them to be able to manage large deployments easily and also provide updates easily. We'll talk also about that later in our sessions. So that's a key aspect that you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about this release on why you should upgrade and why do you care about this release. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Logan, who's going to take you through the demonstration of booking level check-in.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Akshay, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. Today we're going to run through two items that are enhancements to the core functionality of EMS. The first will be booking level check-in enhancements, and the second will be improvements to user-defined fields. Booking level check-in. So really, what is the business case for making some adjustments and enhancements to our booking level check-in? Well, any organization using meeting and conference space runs into scenarios where the parties involved do not show up to the space they've reserved. So creating a check-in for that space gives the option to free up that space for other users, and it also supplies more accurate reporting on how the space is being utilized. So we can see here tracking no-shows by requiring organizers to check in. We can check in from multiple touch points, and we will run through that. And the configuration is done at the room level. So let's actually take a look at that. So you can see right here in our screenshot that we have added this check-in functionality down here at the bottom. So requiring the room to have that check-in functionality, but also supplying a time threshold that is configurable at that room level. So let's actually take a look in the EMS client where that is configured. So by navigating to Configuration, Facilities, Rooms, we have the capability to select the room then, and you can see right here our check-in functionality is added into the configuration piece for the room. So we have multiple places where we have the ability to check in to our bookings. The first place that we will demonstrate is checking in via the reservation book. So through the EMS client again, expert users in the software have the capability to not only check users in using just a simple right click within the reservation book, they can also color code this check-in status, being able to get a very quick visual of exactly who has checked into their meetings, and it's also supplied in a tooltip field as we hover over the bookings. So as I navigate over to the EMS reservation book, we can see right here that by hovering over this at the bottom, that checked in status says, no, we have not checked in. So the capability to right click right here and simply navigate to check in, selecting that, we have quickly and easily checked in to the booking. And as I refresh the view within our reservation book, you can see that the color coding has adjusted to signify that this particular booking has been checked into. Another place that we can check into our bookings is via the email notifications. So as those are sent out, a very quick and efficient way to check into those bookings is right here, just via the link that is supplied in that email that is sent to the end user. We also have the capability to check in to our bookings via the kiosk. So we can see right here our column on the far right allows us from a centralized hub to be able to check in and navigate easily to the bookings from that kiosk available to the everyday user. We also have the capability to check in via the web application. So as we review our reservations in the web app, we have that capability from within our actions right here to check in simply and quickly. So let's go ahead and take a look at that as well. So I'm going to quickly log into Virtual EMS or the web app. And as I scroll to reservations and then go down to view my requests and select that particular booking, you can see right here under our action columns, we have this green icon that allows us to check into this particular booking. After selecting that, you can see that our status has adjusted from confirmed to confirmed checked in. It's also critical to point out that our notification rules have adjusted around this. So previously what was labeled no-show notification rules are now labeled check-in notification rules. And we can apply those rules in minutes prior to or after booking start time. So just to recap on booking level check-in, users can check into bookings from multiple touch points that we highlighted. The space can be freed up if users do not check into their bookings based on the configuration threshold that is outlined by our expert users. And really, why is that important? It really gives us a better utilization of the space and improves the analytics or reporting on that space as well. So giving a much clearer picture of how the space is being utilized. All right, let's move on to the second subject, which is user-defined field enhancements. So the problem that we encountered with user-defined fields really was that filling out custom fields within the web form can be confusing for our everyday users. It does clutter up the user interface. So we were really attempting here to provide a more streamlined and efficient user interface for those everyday users so they can quickly and easily make selections out of our custom fields or user-defined fields. So the solution to this was to support two pieces here. So supporting multi-select from within a question in our user-defined fields, but also the ability to create dependencies between those user-defined fields. So that really is creating not only a better everyday user experience, but it also creates a flexibility for our expert users in the way that we're collecting that data. So you can see right here our user-defined field configuration is still located in the same place, but let's actually jump into the software to take a look at exactly what that looks like. So by scrolling to Configuration, Other, then User-Defined Fields, we have the capability to select, and you can see I have quite a few right here. But first of all, let's take a look at a multi-select. So in selecting a list, just like the configuration previously, we now have this checkbox to allow multi-select for items within that list. So again, building out our basic list, but then selecting the checkbox to allow for that multi-select. We also have the capability to create dependencies. So just to show you right here, highlighting what the dependency is based upon and the specific answer that it's based upon will generate this secondary user-defined field. So let's actually jump into the software, back to virtual EMS, and take a look at exactly what those user-defined field enhancements look like. So this should all look incredibly familiar. So as I scroll down to our other information portion of the web form, you can see within my list for the user-defined fields, I have the capability to select multiple items from the list that is generated from the user-defined field. This second question here, will your event have external guests attending? As I select yes, it generates a secondary or dependent question. Will your event require additional parking at our facility for your external guests? No, it will not. But again, creating a much more streamlined and efficient way to collect this data, but also giving flexibility on how we're collecting that data for our expert users. So just to recap, there were 2 enhancements made to our user-defined fields, multi-select from the list, and also the ability to create those dependencies to questions. And again, just to drive this home, it does create a better everyday user experience, but also some flexibility in the way that we're collecting that data for our expert users. So on that note, I'm going to pass this back to Akshay to run through our system requirement changes.
Thank you, Logan. Before I talk about system requirements, let's quickly have a quick glance on what all components are being updated. This release will be technically numbered V44. So we are moving from V43 to V44. So this is a major release update, which means that all components, modules of the software have some or the other updates. So that's why you see this list, and you see database needs to be updated, desktop client needs to be updated, virtual EMS needs to be updated, Outlook plugin needs to be updated, and so on and so forth. The main updates are in the database and the desktop client. Others are minor enhancements and things that needed to be accommodated because of the changes that were done in the database and the desktop client. The 2 things that are not updated are the web client that is no longer available. So that portion obviously is not updated. System requirements for desktop client. As you notice, Microsoft Vista is no longer supported with the January release, and we have added the support for Windows 10 in this release as well. Please notice the .NET framework change here from 3.5 to 4.5.2. So the prerequisite for the desktop client has now moved from 3.5 to .NET framework 4.5.2. For the database, SQL Server 2005 is no longer supported. If you are on 2005, you should upgrade to a supported version before you do the upgrade. But we support 2008, 2012, and 2014 with the latest service packs with it. Web servers that are required to run the web server components, we no longer support Windows Server 2003 and IIS-6 combination. We support Windows Server 2008, 2012. We will be adding support for Windows Server 2016 as we go forward, but for this release, Windows Server 2016 is not supported. You will notice that the .NET framework that needs to be installed on these web servers has also changed from 3.5 to 4.5.2. The application pool still uses .NET Framework 2.0. On the virtual EMS side, we no longer support IE7. And Microsoft Edge is something that we have not added the support for in this release, but we will be adding that in the upcoming release. The Firefox, Chrome, Safari, those remain the same as they were before. I want to make a note here to all of you. Microsoft last week ended their support for 8, 9, and 10 IE. Microsoft now only supports Microsoft Edge and Internet Explorer 11. So as you think about going to this upgrade, even if we support 8, 9, 10, in our next releases, we are going to deprecate or stop support for 8, 9 for sure. So as you're looking at this, this would be a good time to think about moving to the latest browser versions as well. On the mobile browsers for virtual EMS, we continue supporting Chrome for Android, and now we also support Chrome for iOS 8 and iOS 9, and same Safari for iOS 8 and iOS 9. On the Outlook side, the things remain the same. We did not support Outlook 2003 with our current shipping version. With January, we will not support that. We have not added the support for 2016 in this release, but we'll add that in the next release. Notice that the .NET Framework version has moved up from 3.5 to 4.5.2, even for Outlook. Exchange, we support 2007, 2010, 2013. So this was a quick run through of the system requirements, which gives you an overview of what have we added and what we have removed in terms of supported versions. Now let's transition over to upgrade considerations, things that you need to keep in mind while you're thinking about this upgrade. As I mentioned before, this release updates pretty much all the components that are there. Desktop client, database, virtual EMS, all of them. Because it's a change across, you will not be able to only update one component and make it work with the older version of the other component. So all the components need to be updated at the same time for them to work. This being a major release, you would have to move all your versions, all your components up to that version. Keep in mind that the web client is no longer available starting with this release, so you would need to migrate those users to desktop client. From a configuration perspective, your existing configurations will be migrated as is as soon as you run the database upgrade. So that will take care of moving things over to the new version. But one of the suggestions, especially because we have added a few new settings, like booking level check-in, like automated reporting, notification rule enhancements, this would be a good time to reevaluate your configurations based on these new features, which you could do after upgrade, but you can start planning and thinking about how do you want to change some of those configurations. So our suggestion would be to make sure reevaluate these configurations in the light of the new features and enhancements that we have done. Customization considerations. Keep in mind that you should always have a migration and testing plan as you are doing upgrades like these. And keep in mind that the January release has updated database and APIs. So if you have any customizations that you've done yourself, you need to make sure you need to look at that and evaluate your customizations as well. If those customizations are custom reports that was built by EMS software, then you can contact support. You should have got a notification from support already about how you can contact them to get those updated. So you should follow that process so that you keep that in mind as you go forward with that. One question that has come up in our previous webinars, as well as when we have talked about this release before to many of you, has been the web client. Web client, as it is no longer available starting from this release, the main question that everybody asks is, I still have people who are using the web client. So what do I do? What are my options on there? The number one thing is that the web client users do need to migrate to the desktop client. So that is a given. You do need to migrate them to the desktop client. One thing you need to keep in mind is that with the automated reports being added as a function, you should evaluate whether those web client users no longer need to get access to a system to be able to view some reports, and instead you can automate those reports for them so they no longer even have a need for using any client interface to do that. And these reports will be delivered to them on a regular basis in their inbox, and they can remove the need of even accessing the system. So if you do that, you could take care of some of the users and they no longer need to do that as well. So once you take care of that, if there's still users who need to have access beyond automated report, they would need to move to the desktop client. And the various options that you have is, if you are using web client because you're running a Mac, one of the things you need to consider there is that you should run a Windows environment using virtual machines, which could be Boot Camp, Parallels, and many other virtualization options that exist. The another option you can do is remote desktop, and third is Citrix. So all of these three will be the ways to connect to a Windows environment, even from a Mac. Tablets, if you're using tablets to do these access and you cannot install these there, when I use the word tablets, I mean non-Windows tablets. If you were using Windows tablets like Surface, you can very much install the desktop client there itself. But let's assume these tablets cannot run the Windows OS that we need the desktop client. In that case, Remote Desktop and Citrix are the two options that you can use in that itself. If they were Windows users and they were still using the web client, then they can definitely install the desktop client. And there are two options to install that, either using the web deploy method or the standalone method. A web deploy method is an easier method so that you can install that in many machines, as well talk about the auto update. And we'll discuss that in our webinar tomorrow. Citrix is always an option that is always available for the Windows users as well. So this gives you a quick cheat sheet of if you are a web client, if you have web client users, what are your alternatives and options that are available. The next one, from an eligibility perspective, in order to get access to any new version, whether that is a patch or even a version like this, you are required to have a current maintenance agreement which is up to date. If you have that, then these will be posted onto your support portal. When you log in, you'll be able to download the newer versions as well. If you do not have a current maintenance agreement, then obviously you will not be able to do that. Please contact the sales team in order to get you back onto the maintenance agreements. EMS Lite customers, we have stopped updating the EMS Lite customers, so this update will not apply to the EMS Lite customers. So that's just an exception to the rule because we do not do an updates for EMS Lite customers. EMS Professional excludes booking level check-in, so keep that in mind because the check-in functionality was not available to the professional users before. So that's the same thing here. This is just an enhancement to the check-in functionality where it is moved from building to booking. So we talk about the booking functionality, but keep in mind because as a professional user, you don't have the check-in functionality, hence all those enhancements don't apply to you as well. So that's about system requirements, upgrade considerations. Let's move on to some additional items. These are not big ticket items, but these are the items that I was referring to in my first slides about minor enhancements and changes that we've done. A quick list of that. We have done enhancements around academic scheduling optimization. We have done changes in the virtual EMS for web request streamlining and web menu streamlining. And we have also done changes for the moving from building level check-in to booking level check-in. And the last are some changes that we've done in the Vista management area. For the academic scheduling optimization enhancements, expert users have now option to optimize the non-course bookings when creating a scenario. So if you have a non-course booking, while you create a scenario, you can also optimize those. This option is controlled by a checkbox when you're creating or editing a scenario. So you'll see a new checkbox which allows you to handle this. If enabled, then the non-course booking will also be considered when you're running the optimization. On the virtual EMS side, we have done some streamlining around the web request process. So web process template for request only mode are no longer available to authenticated web users. So if you were using that web request template request only, then for an authenticated web users, those templates will no longer be shown. No changes to the unauthenticated users, which means unauthenticated users can continue using this itself. It's just some ways that we're trying to streamline this process to make it better for the authenticated user. Guest request process will replace web request and classic request labels within the desktop client. So if you notice, if you're looking for web request and classic request, now you'll see a label called guest request in your desktop client instead of web or classic. Our goal here was to save time for expert users when they process these requests. so that there is no duplication of effort, better alignment of web process templates for the users, and eliminate the whole confusion between web reservations and web requests. For the virtual EMS part, the web menu streamlining, we have removed the option of browse facilities, and there is an option of default setup type and capacity information still remain available in the browse space view. Knowledge base menu has also been removed from there, from the web menu as well. So as you think about transitioning from building level check-in, this slide only applies for people. I want to pause here. This slide will only apply to people if you knew what building level check-in meant so far. If you never even knew what building level check-in meant to you, just don't hear me for another minute. Because this is all for people who are using building level check-in. So this is telling them, if you were using building level check-in, what does it mean to you? So the building level check-in has been transitioned to booking level check-in, which means there is no longer a concept of building level check-in. Everything is handled through the booking level check-in. The main goal there was that we got a lot of feedback from people that people who want their everyday users to check in into their meetings, the reason they want that to happen is because they want to make sure when somebody is reserving a space, they're actually utilizing that space. By enforcing them to check into that space and canceling if they don't check in was the way that they would enforce that. And by allowing people to do a building level check-in that was checking into all of those spaces that they were doing did not provide them a granularity enough so that they can get a better handle on that. So that's why we moved to the booking level check-in so that we can allow people to do check-in at individual booking and have better control and have a better knowledge of who's using what space. This is also our effort towards as we go forward in our next releases, and you're going to see that we're going to make this check-in process more and more better. For example, auto check-in, so people don't even have to click a button to do a check-in, and adding check-in into other user interfaces as well as we go forward. So the check-in is an area that we've got a lot of feedback from people who have high valued space that they want to use, and they want to make sure if you're not using it, you don't have it. Also a reminder that the checkout functionality that was there in the building level check-in has now been transitioned to end now. So if you were using the checkout functionality in the new model, you will use the end now functionality to replicate that itself. So we have removed the early checkout report because that makes no sense because we have removed the checkout functionality. All the other reports are now still under reports hoteling, which is all of these checking functionality goes in those reports itself. These are good things to keep in mind when you're thinking about these actions as well. A lot of our user interfaces have taken care of that. For example, in kiosk, where we had this building level check-in, we have transitioned into a way that you can actually, the user can check in into individual booking or can click a button and check in into all bookings also if they want to. So it is using the booking level check-in, but from a user perspective, there is a single button click way of checking them in into all the bookings as well. That covers all the items that I wanted to cover for the additional item as well. I'm going to pass it over to Chris for the next session.
Yeah, thanks, Akshay. Okay, so we do have some time for questions now. We've got about 9 to 10 minutes, so just need a few minutes at the end to wrap up a couple more slides. So we've been trying to answer some of the questions as we've gone through. We'll cover some of those again just to reiterate, and then any that we didn't get to, we'll try to answer right now. Like I said, if we're unable to get to all of them right now, there's a lot of questions that are coming in. We'll give you some emails to go ahead and get those questions answered at a later date. So the first thing I wanted to cover was there's a little bit of confusion between what we mean by the web client and the web app being virtual EMS. So Akshay, would you just clarify for everybody what is going away in January and what their options are as it relates to the web client and to the virtual EMS web app?
Yeah, so anywhere in the slides where you saw the term web app, just replace in your head to virtual EMS. So we were using the placeholder for web app to define what is virtual EMS today. So virtual EMS is not going away. That has been updated to work with this release. What is going away is what was called the web client, which was for expert users and not the everyday users, which replicated or tried to replicate the functionality that was available for the expert users using the desktop client. I hope that clarifies that statement itself. For our webinar tomorrow, that's a good feedback. We'll update our slides to not call web app, but to start using the term virtual EMS, because that's the official term that we have as of now.
Thanks, Akshay. I think the only other thing to mention there too is that if you do have users on the web client itself and if the alternatives don't work for you or the desktop client isn't an option, this upgrade in January is not mandatory. You do not have to upgrade. So if you really do want to keep using the web client in its current state, you can do that. All that we're saying is if you do choose to upgrade, the web client is not a piece of the product that will be upgraded in January. So do not upgrade at all if you want to carry on using the web client. If the alternatives work for you, then you are free to upgrade to the new version that will not include the web client. I did have one other question around whether there would be a cost to upgrade. That was covered in an earlier slide. So as long as your current maintenance agreement is up to date, that will be included. So one question we have here is, will APIs, will they remain an additional cost item? Formerly they were available and then became charged items. Actually, do you know the answer to that one?
Yes, there is no change in the packaging. So if you do not have a license for APIs, you will still not have the license for that. So they are still a charged items. They're still an add-on item that you can buy. Okay.
So one question here, we have a user who's on EMS Professional. Other than booking level check-in, what updates are relevant to this version? That your statement is correct. So other than booking level check-in, EMS Professional users will see the benefit of all other updates included in this release for January. So the UDF enhancements that we've learned about today and all the demonstration pieces that we cover tomorrow, they will all apply to EMS Professional with the exception of booking level check-in. One question we have here is, can we get a list of the API changes?
Good question. The API changes have been documented under every single API documentation. So if you looked at EMS API, when you'll download the new installer for the EMS API, and if you go to the document that comes with the installer, you will see a section which says changes in this version, and you'll be able to get exact changes there as well. So for all relevant APIs, what has changed is part of the API document itself.
Okay, one question we have here, Akshay, can you address the minimum hardware requirements? Was that included in our system requirement slides earlier?
No, it was not. The detailed system requirements are already available, and as part of the, I'll let you address that, how we plan to send the detailed system requirements.
Yeah, so we do have a document available. That will be one of the pieces that I'll cover as soon as we're done with the questions here in terms of what documentation is available today and what will be coming on the day of release on Friday. So that will be covered in just a couple of minutes here. Let's see, what else do we have here? So we have a question around whether we'll be able to send out the PowerPoint. So we won't be sending out the slides themselves. We will make the recordings available. And like I said, there are a couple of pieces of documentation that cover everything that's what's been new in this product release, and also the system requirements. They'll be made available in 2 document pieces shortly after the webinars this week. One other question we have here, so we use virtual EMS as a calendar for everyday users. Will they still be able to use the calendar to view what is available in the building? Actually, you want to cover that one real quick?
Yes, the answer is yes. That functionality will still be available, and you can continue using it in the same way.
Great. Okay, I'm just trying to scroll through here. I think a lot of this is so we have one question around the documentation being a little large. I understand the 2 pieces of documentation that are going to come out from today's webinars that are immediately available, they are very short and to the point, very clearly just illustrate what's new. It's not the user manuals or anything like that. They will be included as well on Friday, but the 2 pieces that we have available are brief, requirements for the system requirements, and also a summary of the what's new documentation. Like I said, the recordings will be made available so you can share the video as well.
To add to that, there would be a substantial change in our documentation, the full documentation, starting from this release. We'll talk about it a little bit more in our session tomorrow, but let me give you a brief answer to that. We are transitioning out of monolithic PDFs to an online help system. So with this release, we will be unveiling an online help system as well, and we'll give you more details about that in the tomorrow's session. But to your point about they being large, they would be moved into an online help, hence they will be searchable, as well as they will be in much more smaller chunk to consume for you itself. So that should address your concern around that area itself, and we'll cover some more detail about that in tomorrow's session.
One question I did see a couple of times here was whether or not the booking level check-in functionality would be a requirement or just an option. It is just an option, so by default that will not be turned on in the new release after you upgrade. But that is there as an option. It's a configurable option. If you do want to require check-in, that is completely up to you. It is not a mandatory piece of functionality. Okay, I think we've got through most of them. I apologize if we've missed any. Like I said, we've got a lot of questions coming in. So I just want to make sure we have time to cover the documentations and kind of what to expect next before we wrap up here in about 5 or 6 minutes. So if you do have any additional questions that we weren't able to get to, if it's support related, please email support@emssoftware.com. If it's something webinar related around the slides, the recordings, you can email our events team at emssoftware.com. And then if it's anything sales related, if perhaps you're an EMS Lite customer and you'd like to take advantage of this new functionality and you're looking to upgrade to either Pro or Enterprise, please contact us about that. Similarly, if you're an EMS professional and you'd really like to take advantage of that booking level check-in functionality, you can inquire about upgrading to our enterprise level product as well. So what's next? What can you expect over the coming days here as this new release becomes available? So the GA date, as you've probably heard by now, is this Friday, January 29th. The software will be available through our support portal at emssoftware.com/support. An email from support will be sent to all customers when the software is available. So there's no need for you to go checking back in to see if it's there every few minutes or every hour. I know everyone's pretty excited about this release and getting our hands on the latest software, but we will let you know as soon as that is available. As Akshay mentioned earlier, we will have a slightly new system for documentation starting on Friday for this new release. It's going to be built around web pages, much more interactive, much easier to navigate. We're not going to have these huge PDF files like we've had in the past. I will just squeeze in a couple more PDFs just before we do that, though. So those 2 documents that I said are available today, the system requirements and the release notes, just detailing what is new in this product release. Those 2 will be made available as PDFs, and I'll send them out to everybody who has registered for at least one of the webinars this week in an email on Thursday. So the recordings and those 2 documents will be available to you tomorrow afternoon. Starting on Friday, in that new experience that Akshay mentioned, we'll include those 2 documentation pieces as well as the updated user manuals, the setup guides, and installation instructions as well. Just a final reminder, there is part 2 of this week's webinar series, starts tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll do a quick recap of the 2 pieces that we demonstrated today, just for those that are perhaps not able to join us today. So if you had colleagues that wanted to just get a quick recap of what was on, this today's webinar, we'll cover that very, very quickly, just so people know what was included functionality-wise. We'll cover those 3 other demonstration areas for the core features of this upgrade, the automated reports, enhancements to notification rules, and the easy installation for desktop users. Particularly recommend getting on tomorrow's webinar for any web client users that are still trying to figure out if maybe the automated reports functionality may be able to take that place. Do join us tomorrow just so you can get a bit more detailed information on that. We'll also recap the system requirements, the upgrade considerations, those additional items that will be part of the release here in January, and then also just recap the availability and documentation pieces. So again, if you have any colleagues that weren't able to join us today, or if you just want to hear our voices again, please join us again tomorrow. That's all we have time for. We are pretty much at our 50-minute limit here, so timed that pretty well. Again, thank you for everybody for joining us today. Thank you to Akshay and Logan for taking us through the demonstration and answering all these questions. Like I said, any additional questions, use those email addresses that we gave out and contact us, and we'll do our best to answer those for you. Otherwise, we look forward to the upcoming release. Look forward to hearing your feedback once you've started to use it. And thank you again, and hopefully you can join us tomorrow. All right, bye everybody.